There's a video for the Doom, Boom, and Gloom channel. Just because I know it's kind of a pointless discussion. Not that they all aren't pointless, but this is probably more pointless, so it doesn't really matter if nobody sees it. His response video to Nick, the Modern Mystic, I post a link to his last video. And if you look at the 3 or 4 before this one, it's just this general, pointing to the fact that it's really unsustainable circumstance. It's there's no way out of this. Decades of, at least a decade of, horror or something like it. And what's the answer? How do you prevent it? How do you reduce the pain? I guess is the bottom line. And so in his last video, he was sort of arguing that, America really can't do this, we're not going to pay the money back thing, and it's not right. And then he sort of changes his mind in the middle of the video and says, well, I guess you can do it. To me, the equation isn't us and some them, like another country or something. It should be the whole world, and the enemy is the rich. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. They've created this problem, and they're part of the only way to solve the problem is to readjust the imbalance they've exploited. They've created and exploited. If we don't do anything, the scenario is basically this. There's going to be this huge worldwide unemployment. It's going to drive wages down. So no matter what the inflation numbers say, whatever they tell you about what's happening to the dollar relative to this currency or some other currency isn't going to matter. The only thing that's going to matter is that 8 hours work is going to lose value. And you're going to have to work harder and more, and eventually you're just going to be working for a hamburger a day. I mean, that's basically the scenario. It's a depression scenario. And numbers don't really matter. The only good news is that somewhere in that horror, that somewhere you might be able to eradicate some of these IOUs to the wealthy, because there will be some sort of monetized inflation of some kind that will make it possible to get rid of some of the debt. But I don't even know if it'll function. I don't even know if that will happen. And we just might end up in some sort of permanent slave state, unless you do have some sort of wake-up call, like a world war or something. Or not, wake-up call is the wrong word for it. You have some kind of contrived incident that distracts the world enough to rebalance these books somehow. But there's no way to pay this back. I mean, as Nick puts it, it's a call on future labor. More than that, it's a call on future productivity. You can't just be a laborer. You have to do labor that somebody else can make money on, and that money will somehow go to pay off what we owe. And that's the insidious part of this thing. It's not about doing productive enough work for you to maintain your survival. It's doing productive enough work for somebody to extract enough surplus out of it that we can somehow pay back this debt, whether through taxation or some other method. It's just there's no way this is going to happen. And we have this privileged class who have taken advantage of inheritance and legacy wealth, and have played the system and played the capitalist game. And that if we're going to lose something, that's so easy to sacrifice, in my opinion. I mean, what's the law? Oh, we're going to give up on billionaires. Oh, what a horror. We're going to give up on the idea that somebody should be born into a life where they'd never have to work. Never have to lift a productive finger in their life, merely because of some birthright. That's what a terrible sacrifice that is. A privileged class. We're going to give up having a privileged class. Wake up, people. That's giving up nothing. That's sacrificing nothing. And so I don't think we should not pay the debt by, let's just keep the same stupid system and not pay the debt. No, we should just declare any part of that debt that is owed to that privileged class as invalid, and just say that game is over. And if the world does it, it's going to be a lot easier than if just, one nation does it. Because the rich will run. I mean, they'll find places to hide, and they'll use their money and power to, oblige people to still serve them, to oblige the world to still serve them. It's really, I'm not going to be able to blueprint the transition to a whole new economy on a piece of paper. Okay, that's not going to happen. But nowhere, it's not being discussed in government. I mean, I hope maybe the CIA has some plans they're cooking, but I tend to doubt it. Some contingencies. Because somebody ought to be talking about this, because there's going to be a real choice. Either people decide, the world decides to become a slave, to work harder and more hours for less and less and less, the majority of people, to serve the fancy of people living in palaces, or they're going to say, no, hell with that. Let's reboot. Let's create some more equitable society. And even if you went right back to the same system, at least you would be starting over. So at least you wouldn't have this legacy liabilities, these IOUs to people who had no business. Number one, they had no business selling the future, and number two, people had no business buying the future. Okay, I mean, the rich had no business basically financing that kind of a game where you sell out your children. They shouldn't have allowed people. The American people shouldn't have been allowed to sell the future. Screw the rich. I mean, I know it sounds too simple, but you've got to get the idea in your head. You've got to see how obvious it is that we can have a civilization without them. We can have productive business. We can have all kinds of things without them. They're not a vital cog in this machine. You can have accountable businesses. They don't have to be government unions, and they don't have to be run by insider political nonsense. No, they can be directly accountable through a direct democracy. You can decide if a company is serving society's needs or not. I mean, there has to just be a balance of power between consumers and workers. And there really shouldn't be anyone else in this equation but consumers and workers. There shouldn't be some elite class that gets to basically own the politics, own the industry, own the capitalism, own the system. Screw that. We don't need them. All right? But I'm not advocating for some sort of I am in a way. I mean, it's a transition society. But like I said, even if you rejected that notion, you really have to deal with the problem that this game is in debt and it can't pay it back. It's not that it won't pay it back. It can't. It's proven over time it can't do it. There's nothing in our politics or in our will or in how we function that enables us to do that. We accidentally ran a surplus under Bill Clinton. It was completely an accident, an aberration. But there's just nothing in these mechanics that allow this money to ever be paid back. And the damage it does over time, especially when everybody starts calling those IOUs and saying, you owe it, pay it. And so now we're bailing out the people that hold the IOUs, and we're screwing the people who are in debt. And so, we'll kick them out of their houses. We'll tear down houses, and that's what we're doing. People are starting to tear down houses because they don't want them to be on the market competing with their other real estate. I mean, it's getting that insidious, and it's going to get really fucking ugly. And we're probably way too late to do much about it now. But nobody's even talking about doing something. And the something has to be something other than, we'll just wait for the system to fix itself. It's not going to fix. It's over. Okay, you have a choice. You either become a slave, either watch 70 or 80% of the American population reduced to the horror of poverty, of working poverty, hard working poverty, Or you accept that, yeah, this billionaire stuff has got to go, this legacy wealth thing has got to go, everybody's got to sort of earn their keep again. We got to try to make everybody as productive as they can be, and we've got to quit depending on the exploitation of some foreign laborer to make our way in the world, because it's technically it's just as bad. I mean, it's not a solution to go find somebody else to enslave to avoid your own slavery. So yeah, I am sort of running out of time. So I mean, that game doesn't work in the long run anyway. I mean, eating a Chinaman isn't any better than eating your own kids. So come on, grow up, face the music. We've got to become more productive. And if the rest of the world won't play, then we have to play it ourselves. We have to fix it ourselves. But something's got to be done. Pretending it's just going to be okay isn't going to work. And the more we pretend, the longer and harder the disaster will be.